Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to Home of Comics. This is Brayden, back here with a Marvel review. It's our first time covering a Marvel project on the channel fully, which is really dope because this one is awesome. X-Men 97, Season 2, Episodes 1 through 3, we're going to be talking about really briefly today. Typically, these reviews are not going to be talking about 3 episodes at once. This is just their release strategy. They're doing the first 3 episodes and then they're going to do an episode a week from then on. I believe there's 9 episodes. There might be 10. Not 100% sure about that. Actually, I can check right now because I have it up. Yeah, 9 episodes. So we're in for a slightly shorter season, but that's okay with me. Um, we had Days of Past Future. That was the first episode. A Force to Be Reckoned with, the second episode, and Rise of Apocalypse Part One was the third episode. We'll have to wait for Part Two next week. I will review these individually, but also sort of together. I'm going to talk about them all as one unit, but then I'll give them individual episode rankings when we're done. So this storyline essentially has three different storylines in and of itself. We've got the past, which we saw at the end of season one. We saw the past is sort of, I believe the year is 3,500 BCE, and we're seeing the X-Men or that group of X-Men that's sort of in the past having to deal with En-Sabah who will become Apocalypse in the future, and seeing his origins essentially from a slave to a conqueror of Egypt and later the world itself. And he's really the first mutant. That's sort of like his tagline. Um, and we can see Magneto. This is episode 3, but I wanted to cover it first. We see Magneto sort of attempt to make En-Sabah accept Charles's vision of what mutant kind and humankind should look like, right? So peaceful harmony between the two. If you can realize it, way far back in the past, maybe you can realize it in the future. Um, I think that was a very heroic idea for Magneto. It's certainly showing character progression for him. But obviously, this doesn't end up happening the way it's supposed to, and that's sort of the cliffhanger that we're left with is Apocalypse very clearly not agreeing to the terms that Magneto sets, um, killing their only chance really of going back to the future. Um, and even though Forge and Bishop both are trying to grab the X-Men from their specific time periods, Bishop's with this team in particular, they're not able really to end up um, getting back. We see that the Pharaoh, who's named Ramatut, who I believe to be Kang, or at least a version of Kang, I don't know if it'll connect to the MCU in that way, would be very exciting actually if that's sort of their way of dealing with the Kang problem is dealing with it in X-Men 97. It could be a really unique way of dealing with a very clear problem in the MCU that they're going to have to rectify. We know that the X-Men 97 universe is at least somewhat part of the MCU, whether it's multiversal. I mean, it kind of has to be, but they clearly are in the same multiverse. And so for me at least, that is enough tell for me to be like, okay, this could actually just be the Ramatut that we saw in um the end of Quantumania, that post credit scene where with all the different Kangs, that might be the same Ramatut. And we'll see Apocalypse and the Pharaoh strike off. I have no doubt that Apocalypse will win that battle, but it's interesting to me. They also keep talking about Temple of the Gods, and maybe that's the way they can go to the future. And I'm wondering too if like that is the Celestials that they keep talking about. I kind of feel like it might be. Again, that could be a really great way to deal with your Eternals problem is discuss Eternals in other shows that are way more popular and try to get them back into the mind the people's eyes before you move on with what I assume will not be a Eternal sequel, but perhaps like a Avengers movie where they address a Celestial or something. Again, a very good way of doing it. So again, that's episode 3. I want to then go to episode 2, which is, and we're gonna go backwards here, because this is gonna be the main storyline, I believe, of the show. Um, Episode 2 is titled "The Force to Be Reckoned With." It also gives us this great X Force intro. I would probably argue that this is the weakest episode of the 3. The X Force episode though deals with Cable, who we saw in episode 1. Essentially, we see why he wants to now deal with Apocalypse's horsemen. And we'll get to that in just a brief second. Episode 2 is really dealing with the ramifications of what's happening in the present. So we see Jubilee, we see Sunspot, Archangel's there, Psylocke is there. I might be forgetting somebody, but those are all the important hitters at least. dealing with X Factor, which is essentially the government's response to mutant kind as a whole. Yeah, they're technically supposed to also keep humans in check too, but we all know the U.S. government really doesn't have any love in their heart for mutants. They're absolutely going to be used to oppress themselves, which isn't really that unlike current day politics, right? I mean, if you want to talk about ICE, for example, they are sort of this police task force, or even the police themselves are sort of a task force meant to sort of oppress humans, and oppress their fellow man, and they're kind of not operating in their best interests because they're operating against their own people. Um, it's a really topical thing to talk about, but I think the show's trying to make that case. The X Factor is sort of like ICE. They're sort of like the police force. Um, Obviously, they're probably acting in better interest than them, but at the end of the day, they're one and the same. And I think that X Factor, or sorry, X Force, they're acting as a vigilante group, but we see vigilantism encouraged in superhero comics, right? So like X Force isn't really breaking the bounds of even what the X Men were doing, but yet they're being ostracized for it. Maybe they're using slightly more violent tactics, but essentially they are the X Men. They're operating as the X Men. They have their roots within the X Men, and Polaris is able to realize this. They end up capturing Jubilee at a point. The X Factor ends up capturing Jubilee at a point because they're going after X Force is going after the Horsemen of Apocalypse, and they end up killing one. And Jubilee gets captured after that, and then Polaris is like, you know what? No, this isn't right. You guys are basically the modern day X Men right now. So while Bishop and Forge are off, like trying to actually gather the X Men because the 1990s desperately needs the X Men right now, we see X Factor essentially operating as an oppressive force against what is basically just the present day X Men in X Force. Sure, they have more violent means, but absolutely they are the X Men in my eyes. The show doesn't even try to hide that. I mean, they do an X Factor intro that replaces the X Men intro, kind of telling you that yeah, this is supposed to be the X Men right now. We do X Force instead. I do want to briefly touch on episode one. I know I went in backwards order here. That's because the timeline, now we're going into the further future here. I could have covered it this way, but episode three was fresher in my mind because obviously I just got back from watching them. Episode one deals with, Cyclops, Storm, Jean Grey. There's probably a few others on that far future team trying to come. Wolverine's there too. There might be another one or two, but those are at least the ones that I could remember. Not every X Men's really highlighted. I think Morph is also with this team. The X Men are not really highlighted in these episodes. I should mention. I mean, besides Cyclops and Jean Grey in episode one, you're not really getting a lot of X Men focus, which is fine, but it is weird. Like Magneto and Professor X are sort of highlighted in episode three, but like really, what you're getting is none of Rogue, none of Nightcrawler, besides a few key moments. And Beast is barely in it too, and I do think that that kind of hurts the show just because these are the characters that we grew up with, right? Like if you watch the 90s animated show, you're seeing a lot of these characters and you're kind of not getting a lot of them in these first three episodes, but that's okay. Episode one, we're seeing Nathan Summers, young Nathan Summers, who I believe is voiced by Michael Johnston, who just came off of Obsession, an amazing, amazing movie. I cannot believe he got a voice acting role in X Men. That's really awesome for him. Um, Nathan Summers, of course, is the son of Scott and Jean, um, and he will become Cable. And so they're kind of here to like figure out, okay, like we have to make this guy Cable. Like, we have to make him like the fighter that will take down Apocalypse. And Nathan originally doesn't know that. Eventually, grows to learn that Cyclops and Jean Grey are his parents, which helps accelerate the plot forward. We see in episode two that they end up having to go back to the past. In their minds, it would be the past. And Bishop actually brings them in because, of course, sorry, no, Forge. My bad. Forge brings them in because Forge is with Storm and obviously wants to make sure that Storm is okay, and Storm's a part of this group. Um, Nathan is going to have an interesting arc because I do think Cable is sort of the main character in all of this. Initially, I thought it might be Rogue, dealing with the fallout of Gambit dying and stuff. I thought that that might be where this season's heading, but it does seem like really Cable and against Apocalypse will sort of be the deal, sort of be what we're dealing with here, in season two. I do think that episode one is probably the middle of the two in terms of how I would rate them. Um, Episode one definitely has emotional moments. The action is really good. There's a scene where Wolverine just rips apart one of Apocalypse's like robots, and that shit is so sweet. I love seeing Wolverine in action. He's definitely my favorite X-Men to see like actually fight. Cyclops is my favorite, but like Wolverine is absolutely like my favorite to watch in battle. He doesn't really, for me at least, Wolverine doesn't really do much outside of the show, like or before, outside of action scenes rather in the show. Like he's got his drama with him. He's definitely got an arc, but like for me, he's not as interesting when he's not fighting things. Cyclops to me is far more interesting as like a not a reluctant leader, but someone who clashes with Professor X at times and definitely wants what's best for the group still. Um, there's not a lot to say about episode one. Like I definitely feel like it was more of a nothing burger than episodes two or three. Um, just because they kind of immediately leave the future. They defeat Apocalypse, sort of in the future, and Apocalypse is like, we must return to the 1990s to fight the X-Men. It's like, okay, we all know where this is going. Everyone in their certain time periods is going to end up going back to the 90s. We haven't seen the future team, or sorry, the past team do that yet. We haven't seen them actually get to the 90s. Yeah, Bishop. Oh my God, I'm mixing up Bishop and Forge. Bishop did like give them the devices to go back home, but then Rama Tut like bombed the area that Apocalypse and the X Men were in, so we don't know what's going to happen with them. I assume they're going to get back, hopefully without any casualties. We just don't know yet. Um, yeah, so the first three episodes are definitely a little bit weaker overall than season one. I'm not I'm not I'm not convinced the season will be better than season one, but I am convinced it will be nearly on the same quality anyway. So to the point where it doesn't matter. I would have given season one like a 10. Like I would have literally given that like a perfect score. Right now we're not at perfection. I gave episode one an 8. Mostly it's inconsequential for the most part. It's gonna build up Nathan as a character, and of course that leads into episode two. Um, but I do not think that like the episode is super enticing as a series premiere, which is probably why they released it alongside two other episodes. Episode two is not as good, but probably far more consequential. And so, in that way, too, it sort of ups itself, but also downgrades itself. I gave it an 8 as well, but definitely a little bit of a lower 8. I thought about giving it a 7 out of 10. And then I would have given episode 3 a perfect 10. I love seeing and Sabanur become Apocalypse. Magneto and Professor X trying their best to make sure he's not Apocalypse, but still failing is beautiful. And the way that these guys monologue and they talk to each other in the dialogue, it's all written so very well. And I think Bodemeo is still, or Bodemayo, apologies, is still he still wrote most of this. I don't think he was head writer of season two. I'm not 100% sure if that's true or not. I looked it up and it looked like someone else was headlining. Matthew Chauncey was headlining season two, but if he didn't write most of the episodes, it kind of doesn't matter. In that case, though, so far I've really enjoyed X-Men 97 season two. I'll be back, of course, with episodes every week as we get to the finale of season two. And hopefully they'll release these yearly so I can continue to talk about them every year because that's ultimately what I want. I love this show and I want to see more of it. Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Make sure to like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Share this video around and let me know your thoughts on the season. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.